that when you look today at the demonstration in the Kurdish areas in Iraq against the Kurdish authorities by people who think that they're not being heard and there's corruption at the top, there's something there that is really broad. And the responsive governments matter in terms of determining what shape of what kind of outcome you have. But it wouldn't matter in terms of, the public wanting to be heard and the governments having to accommodate the public in some shape or form.
Hello, my name is Felipe, Canadian ambassador. You talked about the psychological empowerment is here to stay. Could you draw the correlation between the here to stay and the irreversibility of change, and at the same time the risk that here to stay could eventually produce, backlash that would alter the possibility of change, particularly in the Egyptian context?
Let me just say what I mean by is here to stay. Some of you in the audience know me for a long time, and people in international relations consider me to be a realist, somebody who understands power and focuses on power and understands the distribution of power. When I say public empowerment, it will never be the case in any society, no matter how democratic, that the public is public opinion or public empowerment is the only factor in the outcome of any society. There's going to be institutions that are very important. In Egypt, we know that military institutions will remain very important no matter what. It will remain important in Tunisia, no matter what. It will be a factor in the way this is decided. We know that economic distribution in every society matters. We know power is not equally distributed in society, no matter how much you try. And so what I'm saying isn't really that you're now going to have total responsiveness to public will. That's not what's going to happen. It means that public empowerment, public will, public opinion, public sentiment is going to be now a constant factor in the mix. And this is important to understand, because that tells you in some ways that you can't really predict across the board how this is going to manifest itself in one society or another. You can figure that whatever the shape of distribution of power in every society, there's a new variable here that increasingly is going to matter for the way people configure themselves. So I wouldn't dare predict. And none of us, maybe I've been kind of the voice of doom about explosions in the Middle East for so many years, because I knew public opinion. Public opinion is going to explode. Public opinion is going to explode. You become a false prophet after a while, to the point that I wrote I did my only cartoon attempt to do a cartoon op-ed. I did a cartoon op-ed for the LA Times about a decade ago, in which I talked about the dilemma of analysts who know public sentiment is growing in importance, but you don't know when it's going to happen. So I had this balloon say it's going to explode with the next thing, and it doesn't, and it's explode with the next thing, and then you stop saying it, and boom, the balloon explodes, and then you will not have predicted it. So I'm not one who can think we can predict it. One reason for it, by the way, is that obviously there are a lot of factors, as you sort of alluded to in your question, that you obviously each case has to be looked at separately. But the other thing is that when we look at revolutions are in some ways profound change. And we as social scientists, what is social science? Social science is looking at the patterns of the past, documenting them, and projecting them into the future. That's what social science is. What is the empirically grounded argument? It is something that studies the historical facts, distills the patterns, and projects it into as a probabilistic outcome in the future. That's exactly social science. And so it's anti-profound change. Social scientists are just simply, by definition, are incapable of predicting profound change in history. I mean, we just can't. We could just talk about some elements that are going there, and I think that's part of the problem.
Professor Telhami, this is Syed Shibley, former Egyptian ambassador, and currently the executive director of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Professor, as we know, the Egyptian-American relations during the Mubarak era, regardless some tensions from time to time on the issues of democracy and human rights. However, Egypt was almost a full partner to the U.S. on strategic and security issues. Now, as Egypt is moving towards a genuine democracy, hopeful, and a democratically elected government, how you expect the Egyptian-American relations in this context when political forces, which might be not friendly to American policies, will be included in the government and regime?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm going to tell you my instinct on it, because obviously in the end it's going to be a fluid situation. It depends in the specific outcome. But here's my my thinking. If you're looking at it through Washington's eyes, then in some ways the old order is gone in relation with Egypt. So what you're trying to do is you try to save some of the core issues and have a somewhat friendly relationship with Egypt. That is going to, what does that mean? Okay, so what does that mean? Looked at through congressional eyes, it means protecting the peace treaty with Israel and having some strategic coordination with the U.S., particularly military to military and intelligence to intelligence. Hopefully some political coordination, even if it's reduced from what it was. So if you look at it from that point of view, and you're projecting what some might see as an optimistic view of what's likely to happen in Egypt, they see Egypt as becoming more like Turkey, and with a strong military. Maybe not even Turkey today, but Turkey maybe 10 years ago. And so seeing where you have a strong military that is going to remain a major factor in national security policy, and a political process that is going to be open and that no one can control from the outside. And therefore that space is going to have some side to it that's going to anger some members of Congress. One of the debates I had on CNN when this was going on, one person said, well, now the economic aid to Egypt is going to be cut off. And I said, I don't see why you draw that conclusion, because there was already pressure on the economic aid to Egypt and the rest of the world from Congress. We have a Republican Congress that's anti-foreign aid, period. We have the new so-called Tea Party people. Some of them are calling for cutting off all aid, including to Israel. That was unheard of. This new Senator Rand Paul has who considered himself pro-Israel, who's put a proposal on the table to cut off all foreign aid, including the one to Israel, and certainly to Egypt. So that had nothing to do with the events that are going on. We have an anti-foreign aid sentiment. But if you look at how people are going to react to the crisis, well, much of that aid goes to the military. That relationship between the U.S. military and the Egyptian military is mutually beneficial. It's mutually beneficial. It's not a one-sided. The military benefits from it. The U.S. benefits from it. The military is going to still remain very important in whatever system emerges in Egypt. How important, is hard to know. But if you go into a model like Turkey, 10 years ago, it was very important still in the. And so it's highly improbable that the U.S. wants to jeopardize that relationship, because that is going to remain a constant thread in a voice that the U.S. has a relationship with. So my own view is, despite the anger and statements that might come from Congress, and voices that might be heard depending on what happens here, as long as the basic components are relatively protected, I think the coalition will remain. And those, I mean, clearly Congress expects the Egyptian-Israeli treaty to remain, not be challenged, even if there's not a very active coordination, but that they would remain. And the strategic relationship with the military. I think those are the two that people expected. There will be very tense days coming ahead, and they'll come from Congress. And the initial part of it is going to be not only in the rhetoric that is inevitable in a Democratic campaign. I mean, when you have to open it up here, the Israel issue, the Palestine issue is going to be part of the debate. Even if everybody's more focused on the domestic, it's still going to be part of the debate. And somebody's going to be saying something that's going to anger Congress. When you have the first policy issue that's going to be one of the contention is going to be pertaining to less than Hamas. That's the first thing, because I imagine, given what public sentiment is, that's an issue where there might be a change in Egyptian policy in a way that is going to play Congress. So I think there will be tense days in the discourse. And I will, in the same way there were tense days during the Bush administration, where there were many critics of Mubarak himself pushing for reform, at the same time the national security institutions were actually pushing for maintaining the relationship because they see Egypt as being very important. So by and large, I think it'll be tense, but I don't see a huge shift in that relationship in the short term. I don't see it personally.
My name is Nanda Baraka. I'm a historian and a diplomat. And actually, I have a question and a short remark. First, the short remark is that you mentioned the backlash that might happen. And I think it's important for us to see, as you mentioned, it's not just corruption, it's not just the economy, it's democracy, it's the change. And that is why it's very important for us to be clear-minded about whether democracy is a means to end economic inter alia or an end in itself. And I think it is an end in itself. It's worth being an end in itself. Or perhaps a little bit of both, that having this end helps you in certain ways, but we shouldn't be dismayed if we don't achieve the progress, if it doesn't turn rosy the next day. That is the remark. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, since it's about the Middle East in general, it's interesting. I mean, hasn't it? Must have caught your attention, this sequentiality, that it's as if each Arab country is waiting for the other to finish its revolution and take all the world's interest, and then it starts its own. So first it's Tunis, and then it ends, and then Egypt starts, and then it ends, and then Libya starts, which shows that there is an Arab